Maria had always believed that life, no matter how hard, had a way of balancing itself. But when she became a mother, that belief was tested in ways she had never imagined. She lived in a small, worn-down apartment at the edge of town, the kind of place where the walls had thin cracks that let in cold drafts during winter and searing heat during summer. It wasn't much, but it was hers, and at least it gave her and her baby some shelter. Maria's days started before sunrise, with the soft cries of her newborn Leo, pulling her from restless sleep. If she would carefully check him, making sure he was warm and had enough to eat, often realizing that her own breakfast would have to wait until she had secured something for him. She had never felt love as intensely as she did for Leo. Every tiny coo or small grasp of her finger reminded her why she was struggling so hard, why every hardship mattered, and why giving up was never an option even when hope seemed distant. Maria didn't have family to rely on. Her parents had passed away when she was young, leaving her to grow up in a series of foster homes. She had distant relatives, but none who could offer more than occasional words of advice or small gestures that rarely helped in a practical sense. The loneliness of her life was a heavy burden, and it was made even heavier now that she had a tiny human depending entirely on her. She felt the pressure constantly, the weight of responsibility pressing down on her shoulders. The smallest setbacks felt monumental. A missed paycheck, a broken washing machine, a sick day for Leo. They weren't just small troubles. They threatened the very survival of her little family. Every day Maria tried to find work. She moved from one low-paying temporary job to another, never staying anywhere long enough to gain stability. She worked at a cafe for a few weeks, folding napkins and cleaning tables, only to be told that her hours were cut because business was slow. Then she found a job at a small local shop, but even there she was paid barely enough to cover rent, let alone food or diapers. Each time she faced rejection or loss of income, Maria felt the sharp sting of anxiety. She had no savings, no support system, nothing to fall back on. She was constantly calculating how to make her limited money stretch, how to make sure Leo would not go hungry, how to keep a roof over their heads. Despite everything, Maria remained determined. She kept Leo close at all times, cradling him against her chest as if her love alone could protect him from the world. She would talk to him softly while she washed dishes or folded laundry, whispering little words of comfort and hope, as if they could shield him from the harsh reality around them. Her life was a mixture of exhaustion and tenderness, a careful balancing act where she tried to keep despair at bay. Each small moment of joy, a laugh from Leo, a new skill he learned, a warm meal they managed to eat, was a precious victory that reminded her that her efforts mattered. But the challenges never stopped. The bills seemed endless. Utilities, rent, groceries, baby formula, they all demanded attention, and there was never enough money to cover them. She often stayed awake at night, calculating, worrying, thinking of ways to survive another month. Sometimes, she would go without food so that Leo could have more. Sometimes she would wear the same clothes for days because she couldn't afford new ones. The stress and fatigue often left her feeling weak, but she refused to let it show. She had to be strong for Leo, for their survival. Maria's apartment itself reflected her struggle. The peeling paint and broken faucet were constant reminders of how little she had. There were days when the cold seeped through the cracks in the walls, chilling both her and Leo, yet she couldn't afford heating bills. She would layer blankets over him, rocking him back and forth, murmuring promises that one day things would be better. And even though she often felt like she was failing, the love she had for Leo never faltered. Every small smile from him, every tiny movement, fueled her will to keep going. In her quiet moments, Maria would think about the life she had hoped for. She had imagined a home filled with laughter, where she could give Leo every comfort and security he deserved. But reality was harsh. Dreams felt distant, almost impossible. She missed the sense of safety that other mothers seemed to take for granted. Yet she never let the thought of giving up take hold. She kept reminding herself that she had survived worse, and now she had someone more precious than herself to fight for. Her determination was fierce, born not from hope that life would be easy, but from love so strong that it would not let her surrender, even when the days seemed long and the nights endless. Maria clung to small routines that gave her a sense of control. She would sing to Leo softly in the mornings, making sure he woke up with a familiar, comforting voice. She would gently rock him to sleep at night, whispering stories about a better future, hoping that somehow her words could shape it. Every diaper changed, every bottle prepared, every step she took to keep them alive felt like a battle won. Though she was exhausted and sometimes scared, Maria carried on, propelled by a deep sense of responsibility and an unyielding love that refused to break under pressure. This was Maria's life, a constant struggle, a daily fight to provide the bare necessities, and a relentless commitment to her baby. It was a life filled with worry, sleepless nights, and the unspoken fear of failing. Yet it was also a life defined by devotion, courage, and resilience. Despite having almost nothing, Maria clung to her small moments of joy, her quiet victories, and the bond with Leo that gave her purpose. It was a life that, though difficult and fragile, carried the seeds of hope, seeds that would later grow when help finally arrived. Maria's life, already full of struggles, began to feel even heavier as the days went by. Despite her determination and relentless effort, the obstacles kept piling up one after another, like unrelenting waves crashing over her small life. She worked long hours, often more than she should have for her own health, just to make sure that Leo had enough to eat. Every time she thought she was catching up, another expense or emergency appeared, reminding her that survival in her world was never guaranteed. The sense of helplessness began to creep in, though she tried hard not to show it. Every time Leo cried, it pierced her heart with guilt, as if his tiny tears were a reflection of her own inability to provide a life she wished for him. The food bank, which had once been a small lifeline, started to run low on resources. Maria would wake early and join the long line of people waiting for donations, hoping that the shelves would still have formula, canned goods, or diapers. But some days, the supplies were gone, leaving her with nothing to take home. She would try to make do with whatever she could scavenge, stretching tiny portions of food into meals for both her and Leo, but it never felt enough. Watching her baby tug at her shirt, searching for nourishment, filled her with a mix of guilt and desperation. She hated that she couldn't give him the abundance of love she had for him in material ways, and she silently promised herself that someday things would be different. Her work was unstable, and that instability made planning for the future impossible. One week she might have enough shifts to cover rent, and the next week hours were cut unexpectedly. She learned to anticipate the worst, always preparing for a day when the money wouldn't come, but it never made the moments of sudden scarcity any easier to bear. Bills piled up on the small kitchen counter, a physical reminder of the life she couldn't fully manage. She would stare at them at night, feeling a mix of fear and frustration. Each envelope felt like a weight pressing down on her chest, making sleep almost impossible. Every knock on the door, every phone call about overdue payments, filled her with anxiety so sharp it left her trembling. The stress wasn't just financial, it began to take a toll on her health as well. Her hands were constantly raw from washing dishes and doing laundry by hand, because she couldn't afford repairs for the broken appliances in her apartment. Her back ached from long hours of standing at work and from the nights she spent rocking Leo to sleep. Despite her exhaustion, Maria refused to stop. She knew that if she slowed down, even for a moment, the precarious balance they had might collapse entirely. Each day was a careful calculation. How much food could she give Leo without running out herself? How many hours could she work without burning out completely? How could she stretch what little money she had to make it last? Then there were the moments when Leo fell ill. Even a simple cold became a crisis. Maria would watch him cough and wheeze, feeling helpless as she tried to comfort him with the limited medicine and remedies she could afford. The worry kept her awake at night, listening for his breathing, checking if he was warm enough, counting every little movement as a sign of whether he was okay. Her heart ached because she wanted more than anything to protect him from the harshness of the world, but she had no power to stop the illness from threatening him. She felt trapped between the responsibility to care for him and the limitations of her own resources, a helplessness that gnawed at her day and night. Isolation also weighed heavily on her. She didn't feel she could reach out to neighbors or friends for help. Some had turned her down before, and the fear of being judged or rejected made it almost impossible to ask. Maria's pride, mixed with the fear of being seen as a failure, kept her from seeking help even when she desperately needed it. She felt as if the world expected her to survive on sheer willpower alone, and she pushed herself to meet those impossible expectations. She became skilled at hiding the depth of her struggle, wearing a brave face while inside. Anxiety and exhaustion twisted together like a heavy knot in her chest. Everywhere she looked, reminders of what she could not provide loomed over her. Other mothers in the park seemed to have enough, smiling with children in clean clothes, carrying bags filled with groceries. Maria felt a pang of envy, not out of malice, but because she wished for her own child to experience the same security and comfort. She wondered why her life had to be so difficult, why her determination and love weren't enough to make things better. Sometimes she cried quietly after Leo went to sleep, tears of frustration, fear, and helplessness. She felt caught in a cycle she could not escape. The more she worked, the more tired and anxious she became, yet the needs of her child never diminished. The sense of hopelessness was magnified by the knowledge that the future seemed uncertain. She could not imagine a path that led to stability, a place where she and Leo would not constantly be on the edge. Every plan she made seemed fragile. Every attempt to save a little money ended up undone by some unexpected expense. Yet even in the darkest moments, Maria's love for Leo acted as a lifeline. She reminded herself that she could not give up, that she had to keep pushing forward even when the world seemed determined to push her down. Her determination was like a fire, small but unextinguishable, fueled by the tiny hands that clung to her and the innocent eyes that looked to her for safety and love. Despite the fear, exhaustion, and endless struggle, Maria found small ways to keep hope alive. She would sing to Leo softly, whispering words about a better life and brighter days. She would create tiny routines to bring a sense of normalcy, even if everything else was unstable. Bath time, feeding time, and bedtime rituals became moments of connection and comfort, small islands of peace in a sea of uncertainty. These moments reminded her that, while her life was hard, it was not hopeless. and that her love for her baby was the strongest thing in the world, capable of keeping her moving forward, no matter what. The rising pressure, the constant worry, and the seemingly endless struggle made Maria's world feel like a tightrope stretched over a canyon. One wrong step could mean disaster. She felt the weight of the world on her shoulders, yet she kept walking, step by careful step, holding Leo close, refusing to let him fall into the hardships she could not prevent. Every day was a test of endurance, courage, and love, and even though she often felt like she was barely surviving, her determination to protect and nurture Leo never faltered. Her life in this period was defined by struggle and resilience, fear and hope, despair and determination. The challenges seemed insurmountable, but she faced them every day, never letting them crush her spirit entirely. Though Maria had nothing, she had a purpose stronger than exhaustion or fear. A love so deep it demanded perseverance. That love kept her moving forward, step by step, hour by hour, even when it felt like everything was against her. Maria's life, already heavy with struggle, reached a turning point on a quiet, ordinary day that she would never forget. It began like any other day, with her waking before dawn to tend to Leo. His soft cries echoed in the small apartment, pulling her from a restless sleep. She carefully checked his temperature, ensured he was fed, and dressed him in the little clothes she had managed to wash the night before. Every routine was a delicate balance. One mistake or lapse could mean hunger, cold, or discomfort for her baby. She carried Leo close, feeling the warmth of his tiny body and the weight of her responsibility pressing against her chest. Today, however, something felt different. There was a sense of urgency that she couldn't quite name, a small whisper of hope that perhaps the universe might finally offer a helping hand. The day had started as usual, with Maria leaving the apartment to run errands. The streets were bustling with people hurrying to work, to school, to lives that seemed far easier than hers. She clutched Leo's hand tightly as she navigated through the crowd, careful not to let him slip from her grasp. They arrived at the local clinic, a modest building where families came for checkups, vaccinations, and health advice. Maria had been there before, but today, Leo had developed a mild fever and a persistent cough, and she was anxious. Every cough made her heart tighten. Every shiver sent waves of worry through her. She had limited resources, and the thought of not being able to afford proper care gnawed at her. While waiting in the crowded clinic, Maria noticed a young man moving through the room with a calm, attentive presence. His name tag read Daniel, and he was a volunteer social worker. There was something about the way he spoke to patients, with kindness and patience, that drew her attention. Maria had been wary of people before. Trust was difficult when life had taught her that assistance was often temporary, conditional, or accompanied by judgment. But there was a softness in Daniel's approach that made her pause. He approached her cautiously, as if sensing the weight of her struggles. Daniel knelt slightly to meet her gaze, speaking gently. He asked simple questions about Leo, his health, and Maria's situation, making no assumptions but offering his attention fully. Maria felt a flicker of something she hadn't felt in a long time: safety. For a moment, she allowed herself to breathe, to tell a small part of her story without fear of judgment. She spoke quietly, telling him about the long hours she worked, the nights she went hungry so Leo could eat, the constant worry about rent, bills, and baby formula. The words spilled out, carried by desperation but also by the strength she had cultivated over months of survival. Daniel listened without interruption, nodding and offering brief words of encouragement that felt sincere and human. For the first time in months, Maria felt seen. Someone acknowledged the magnitude of her struggle without pity or condescension. Daniel asked if she would be willing to receive some assistance, explaining that there were programs to provide temporary shelter, food, and medical support. He spoke about vocational training programs that could help her secure stable work, and he offered to personally help her navigate the application process. Maria felt a mix of emotions: relief, disbelief, and cautious hope. She had been too proud or too scared to reach out before, but now the possibility of real help felt tangible. Over the next several days, Daniel became a steady presence in her life. He visited her apartment to assess her situation, helped her fill out forms, and guided her through the complicated web of social support systems. Each step brought small victories: a temporary supply of formula for Leo, approval for short-term housing, and access to medical care. Daniel's presence was more than practical. It was emotional support. Maria realized that sometimes survival required not only personal strength but also the willingness to accept help from someone who cared. She began to feel the heavy weight on her shoulders lighten slightly, replaced by a cautious optimism that perhaps things could improve. With Daniel's guidance, Maria also started exploring options for the future. He encouraged her to consider vocational training in childcare, something she had always felt drawn to but thought impossible due to her responsibilities and lack of resources. Together, they mapped out a plan, first stabilizing immediate needs, then working toward long-term goals. Maria found herself thinking differently about her situation. Instead of seeing only walls and obstacles, she began to see small openings that could lead to stability and a better life for both her and Leo. The path was still daunting, but now it existed. The turning point was not dramatic or sudden. It was quiet, gentle, and human. Daniel's belief in her, coupled with the tangible support he offered, gave Maria a sense of possibility she hadn't felt in months. The fear and anxiety still lingered, but they no longer dominated her every thought. Each step forward, getting Leo examined, receiving groceries, securing a safe place to sleep, felt monumental. Maria realized that help could arrive in unexpected ways, that human kindness and connection could create real change. She began to allow herself to imagine a future where she and Leo were not constantly struggling, where love and determination could be complemented by support and opportunity. As the days turned into weeks, Maria's routines began to shift. Instead of feeling like she was barely surviving, she started to feel like she was moving toward something tangible. She still had responsibilities, and the challenges had not vanished, but she carried a new sense of confidence. The small victories, guided by Daniel's help, were proof that change was possible. Maria began to feel the faint stirrings of hope, not the naive, fragile hope of dreams, but the solid, grounded hope that comes from concrete steps toward improvement. Daniel's intervention also opened Maria's eyes to the broader network of support around her. She met other volunteers and mothers who had faced similar struggles, learning from their experiences and gaining a sense of community. For the first time, she felt that she was not completely alone in the world. This realization brought comfort and strength, and she began to think of her struggles as part of a journey rather than an unending battle. She understood that while life had been harsh, the arrival of help at the right moment could change the course of her story. Through this turning point, Maria discovered something vital. Resilience alone was not always enough. While her love for Leo had carried her this far, the kindness and intervention of another human being could transform despair into possibility. The support she received did not take away her responsibilities, but it made them manageable, giving her space to breathe, plan, and grow. It was a lesson that would shape her approach to life forever. By the end of this period, Maria's perspective had shifted. She no longer viewed herself solely as a struggling mother, teetering on the edge of survival. She began to see herself as someone capable of building a future, someone who could embrace help without shame, and someone whose determination could be strengthened by human kindness. The turning point was quiet but profound, a moment where Maria realized that even in the darkest circumstances, help could arrive, and with it, a chance to rewrite the story of her life. With Daniel's guidance, Maria's life began to shift in ways she had only dreamed of before. The days of barely surviving were slowly giving way to a sense of stability. Though the path was still filled with challenges, it started with small, immediate victories. Daniel helped her secure temporary housing, a modest apartment that was warmer, safer, and cleaner than the one she had been living in. For the first time in months, she could let Leo crawl on the floor without worrying about him catching cold or getting hurt on broken tiles. She could finally breathe without the constant panic of eviction looming over her head. The walls of her new apartment weren't just physical boundaries, they were symbols of a small but crucial shift in her life, a space where she and Leo could begin to feel safe. Food and basic necessities, which had once been a daily source of stress and fear, started to become more reliable. Daniel connected Maria with programs that supplied formula, diapers, and groceries. At first, Maria was hesitant to accept this help. Pride and fear of judgment made her uncomfortable, but she soon realized that accepting support was not a weakness, it was a necessary step to ensure Leo's well-being. She learned to prepare meals with the resources she had, stretching them to provide nourishment and comfort. The sight of Leo eating a warm meal without her having to ration every bite brought her immense relief and a quiet, deep joy she had not felt in a long time. Medical care for Leo also became manageable. His cough and fever, which had caused Maria endless nights of anxiety, were now being treated properly. Regular checkups and vaccinations gave her a sense of control over his health, something that had seemed impossible in the past. Every visit to the clinic reminded her that he could grow up strong and healthy, that she was no longer powerless to protect him from the dangers of illness. The relief she felt watching his tiny body recover from sickness reinforced her belief that their lives were slowly, steadily improving beyond meeting immediate needs. Daniel encouraged Maria to think about long-term stability. He suggested vocational training programs that could help her gain skills and secure a steady job, something she had thought was impossible while raising a newborn. Maria hesitated at first. The idea of leaving Leo in someone else's care while she attended classes seemed daunting. She worried about balancing training, work, and childcare. But Daniel helped her find a program that included childcare support, making it feasible. He guided her through applications, taught her how to manage her time, and reminded her that investing in herself was also investing in Leo's future. Slowly, she began to see the possibility of a life beyond mere survival. As she entered the training program, Maria discovered strengths she had forgotten she possessed. Learning new skills reignited a sense of purpose and pride. Each completed assignment, each new concept mastered, was a small triumph that reminded her she was capable of more than she had realized. Her confidence grew as she navigated the program, balancing study and motherhood with a determination she hadn't known she still had. For the first time in a long time, she felt a sense of progress, a path forward. Not just a daily struggle, Her relationship with Leo deepened in this period of gradual improvement. No longer constantly consumed by anxiety over their next meal or place to sleep, Maria could focus on nurturing him emotionally. She read to him, sang songs, and watched him explore the small apartment with a sense of curiosity and joy. She celebrated each milestone, from his first steps to his growing vocabulary, with a heart full of pride and gratitude. These moments reminded her why every struggle was worth enduring, and why hope, even when fragile, it should never be abandoned. Financial stability remained a challenge, but the support Maria received made it manageable. Small savings began to accumulate, giving her a cushion for emergencies. She no longer felt the constant, crushing fear of the next bill or unexpected expense. The security of knowing there was some stability allowed her to plan for the future. She began to dream not extravagantly, but realistically of providing for Leo's education, a stable home, and a life where he could experience comfort and happiness. Each small plan reinforced her sense of control and purpose. Socially, Maria began to connect with other mothers and volunteers through the programs Daniel introduced her to. She realized she was not alone in her struggles. Listening to the experiences of others and sharing her own gave her emotional strength. She learned practical tips from mothers who had been in similar situations and offered her support to those just beginning their journey. These connections created a small but vital community around her, one that gave her reassurance, advice, and companionship. Maria's life was no longer isolated, and the sense of belonging strengthened her. Resilience. Maria also began to see the emotional impact of the support she had received. Daniel's consistent presence had not only provided practical help but also reminded her of the power of human connection. She understood that help could come in the form of guidance, encouragement, and belief in her abilities, not just material support. This realization inspired her to think beyond her immediate needs, to consider the possibility of one day helping others who found themselves in situations like hers. Throughout this period, challenges still arose. Leo had moments of illness, unexpected expenses appeared, and the pressure of juggling responsibilities remained. But Maria faced these challenges with a renewed sense of strength. She had learned that survival was no longer just about enduring but about building, step by step, a life that was sustainable and nurturing. Every problem she encountered was no longer a reason to despair, but an opportunity to apply the skills, knowledge, and support systems she had acquired. By the end of this period, Maria had transformed her daily life from constant crisis to cautious stability. She had a safe home, steady access to food and medical care, a vocational path, and a growing network of support. More importantly, she had regained hopefully grounded hope that was based on action and achievable steps rather than mere wishful thinking. The journey had been neither quick nor easy, but each small victory contributed to a larger sense of empowerment. Maria's confidence in herself and in her ability to provide for Leo had returned, stronger than ever. In this new chapter, Maria began to see her life not as a series of struggles but as a path of growth. She understood that while hardships might still arise, she now possessed tools, resources, and human support to face them. The lessons of resilience, determination, and acceptance of help had been ingrained through experience, shaping her into a mother who was not only surviving but preparing to thrive. Her story had shifted from a relentless fight for survival to the beginnings of a life with hope, stability, and potential, a life that could finally allow both her and Leo to flourish. Months had passed since Maria first met Daniel, and in that time, her life had transformed in ways she had never imagined possible. The fear and uncertainty that had once defined her days had given way to a quiet stability, and for the first time, she allowed herself to breathe fully, to imagine a future that was not just about surviving but about thriving. She had completed her vocational training program in childcare, an accomplishment that filled her with pride and confidence. The skills she had learned were now tools she could use to build a secure life, and for the first time, she felt a sense of professional identity. Beyond being just a struggling mother, Maria had secured a steady job at a local childcare center, a position that allowed her to apply her training while providing for Leo. The job brought more than just a paycheck. It gave her a sense of purpose and independence she had not experienced before. She could now plan for the months ahead with confidence, knowing that her income could reliably cover rent, utilities, food, and other necessities. There was a peace in this predictability, a relief that allowed her to focus on what mattered most, raising Leo in a safe, nurturing environment. Each day she left the center with a feeling of accomplishment, returning home to her son with stories of her work and laughter that was no longer tinged with exhaustion or anxiety. Leo's life had changed along with hers. He thrived in the safe, stable environment Maria could now provide. His health improved, his laughter grew louder, and his curiosity blossomed. Maria watched him explore the world with a sense of wonder, no longer overshadowed by the constant worry that had once consumed her every thought. Bedtime routines became moments of joy rather than exhaustion. As she read to him, sang songs, and shared stories of hope and imagination, watching him grow with confidence and happiness brought Maria an indescribable sense of fulfillment. She realized that the small victories of the past, the warm meals, the safe apartment, the access to medical care, had compounded into something far greater, a childhood filled with security and love. The impact of Daniel's help and guidance continued to resonate in Maria's life. She thought often about the day she had first met him in the crowded clinic, how a simple conversation had opened a door she had believed was permanently closed. His support had not only provided immediate relief but had set her on a path toward independence and empowerment. Maria understood that his intervention had been a turning point, not just in her circumstances but in her mindset. She now approached challenges with a sense of capability and determination, confident that obstacles could be overcome with effort, persistence, and the willingness to accept help when needed. With the stability in her own life, Maria began to consider ways she could support others. She remembered the fear, exhaustion, and hopelessness she had felt, and she wanted to ensure that other mothers in similar situations would not feel so alone. She volunteered at local programs, helping mothers navigate childcare, access resources, and gain confidence in their own abilities. Sharing her story gave others hope and inspiration, and in turn, strengthened her own sense of purpose. She realized that her experiences, once sources of despair, had become tools to empower and uplift others. This shift gave her life a new dimension, transforming her journey from one of personal survival to one of communal impact. Maria's confidence extended beyond her work and volunteer activities. She began to take steps to secure a more permanent home for herself and Leo. She explored options for renting a larger apartment in a safer neighborhood, one with space for Leo to play and grow. The idea of creating a stable, long-term home filled her with excitement and hope. She started saving diligently, budgeting carefully, and planning every step to ensure that her hard-earned stability would continue to grow. Each small saving was a reminder of how far she had come, a tangible marker of her progress from desperation to security. The emotional growth Maria experienced was as significant as the material improvements in her life. She reflected on the months of struggle, on the nights she had spent awake worrying about every detail, on the fear that had threatened to overwhelm her. Those experiences, while painful, had shaped her resilience and deepened her empathy. She recognized that the love she had for Leo had always been the driving force behind her perseverance. But she also acknowledged the importance of the human connection that had intervened at a crucial moment. It was this combination, her own determination and the support of others, that had allowed her to rebuild her life. Maria also began to dream more boldly. She imagined Leo attending school without the shadows of insecurity looming over him, participating in activities she had never thought possible. She thought about future vacations, simple joys like visiting the park on weekends or celebrating birthdays without the stress that had once overshadowed every special occasion. These dreams were no longer abstract fantasies but realistic goals she could plan for and achieve. The sense of possibility that had been missing for so long became a steady companion, guiding her decisions and motivating her efforts. Her relationship with Leo deepened in ways that were both subtle and profound. With fewer worries and more confidence, Maria could be fully present with him. She listened to his stories, encouraged his questions, and celebrated his accomplishments. Their bond grew stronger, founded not only on love but also on the stability and trust that had been absent in the early months of his life. Maria realized that providing security and care went beyond material needs. It included emotional support, guidance, and the freedom for a child to explore the world safely. Maria's journey had taught her lessons she would carry forever. She understood that life could be unpredictable and challenging, but that courage, perseverance, and openness to help could change the course of even the most difficult circumstances. She had discovered the strength that comes from facing hardship head-on, the hope that emerges when support arrives at the right moment, and the power of resilience fueled by love and determination. Her story was no longer one of desperation but of triumph, built on small victories, human kindness, and unwavering devotion to her child. Looking back, Maria marveled at the transformation in her life. From nights of worry, hunger, and fear, she had emerged into a life of stability, purpose, and hope. Each milestone completing her training, securing a job, creating a safe home for Leo, volunteering to help others was a testament to the journey she had endured. She understood that while challenges would continue to arise, she now possessed the skills, support, and confidence to meet them head. Her life had shifted from surviving to thriving, and in that process, she had become a source of hope and inspiration to others. Maria's story ended, this chapter not with the absence of struggle but with the presence of triumph. She had rebuilt her life through determination, resilience, and the support of a compassionate human who had stepped in at the right moment. Her journey from despair to stability, from uncertainty to hope, was a testament to the strength of the human spirit and the power of love, both given and received. As she watched Leo play and grow, Maria knew that their future was no longer dictated solely by circumstance. Instead, it was shaped by courage, opportunity, and the unwavering belief that even in the darkest times, help, hope, and transformation were possible.